Hey everybody, Tom Barnes here. Stories from the 78 from the old Midlothian Turnpike, right in the Midlothian area. You're wondering, why is this the old one? Well, that is the new one that you're looking at right here. That is Midlothian Turnpike. There's Rubio Woods out that way, Chicago area forest preserve. And why am I here for a story from the 78? Well, it's about time that I do a story that I have known and loved for many, many years, and that is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, which is right here along this old stretch of road that is known as Midlothian Road. And as you can see, the road is still, at least remnants of the road is still here. So I'm here early in the morning. They do not let people in this area at night for obvious reasons, because there's been a lot of vandalism and things like that over the years. So I got here super early. I'm on All Hallows Eve in this park. And I gotta say, the lore of this park, or this cemetery, or whatever you want, the grove, if you will, goes back to the 1800s. Like 1833 were some of the first settlers of this area. You got to remember, Chicago wasn't Chicago. I got my notes here because I want to make sure I'm saying these things right. Chicago wasn't Chicago until 1837. And even then, it was a tiny little town. So people were coming west to try to find their fortune. So they would go to Chicago. They realized not a whole lot going on in Chicago. Sorry, I'm hearing a weird noise as I'm walking through the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And they would come out this way to make their money. And how they make their money, they would come to these timber stands, which were these big areas of timber, right? And they would harvest the timber and make money. So this area was known, I'm gonna flip it back this way. This area was known to what today is the Bremen Township, Oak Forest, Midlothian, Tinley Park, and Crestwood. That's what this area used to be called. Bachelor's Grove was a huge area, and a lot of people think it was because of the English bachelors that came to the area, which, you know, can and can't be true. A lot of people don't know that for sure. That's just kind of old lore. But a lot of English did come to this area as they were looking for their millions, because like I said, Chicago was kind of up and running, but not a full tilt city just yet. So people came out to this area, which the Bremen Township was basically all of Bachelor's Grove. And the early settlers, particularly a man named by Stephen Rexford, he was known as one of the first settlers of this entire area. And when I say settlers, I'm not really meaning like settlers that you might think. Basically, they were squatters. They came to this area before you can even purchase land, because the first purchased land was 1835 by a female. It's that owned the land that is now has Bachelor's Grove in it. But back in the day, Stephen Rexford and his brother Norman Rexford, who came to the area, who would then later call and name Blue Island what it is today. So they came here, they settled, they started taking down all the timber in the area. And mind you, it didn't look like this. This forest that you're looking at is an artificial forest. It wasn't originally like this. There were timber stands, which is basically huge lots of land that had timber on it, but mostly this was swamp back in the day. And the swamp and the timber is what people came in. And then when they plowed all the timber, they would then make it farmland. And there's information that goes back to a certain census area of 1833, where they planted trees like fruit trees, peach trees, and apple trees, and all that kind of things in the grove that was left over from what was the old timber stands. So the Rexford family, going back to 1833, where they planted the trees according to the United States Agriculture Survey of 1833. So I'm just walking around. I haven't been here in years. And why am I telling you all this? Well, for as many reasons. So you see this old road right here. This is old Midlothian Turnpike. So this was kind of a big deal back in the day. It run right through the area that is known as Bachelor's Grove, and it went right past Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And why is that important? Well, back in 1893, during the Chicago World's Fair, the game of golf was kind of new in the States as far as something to do, and they wanted to build a big, beautiful golf course after the World's Fair. So they started the Midlothian Country Club, and people would drive out this way, but the land was not great for driving. They had to have wagons pull through the mud and everything else, and as you can imagine, because it's the south side, it's swampy in this area, it became a problem. So then they had a train come out here to connect it, and when the train connected, this road that you see right here, the Midlothian Turnpike, the old Midlothian Turnpike, kind of became obsolete. So when the family that I mentioned earlier, Rexford, they were kind of on the land, and when they started, oh, look at that, there's a deer running. It scared the hell out of me. When the land became available to purchase in 1835, the Rexford family, when I meant Stephen and Norman, they were here. And if you can prove that you made the land better by being here, you improved the land, then you had the right to purchase this, almost like first dibs. So it was interesting, but a family named the Everden family were the first landowners of the land that is known to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And that's what you're looking at right here. The road kind of ends, and here are the remnants of old Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And when this family bought the land in 1835, many believe that they built the cemetery on the land due to many reasons, and many reasons of the folklore that people believe today. You know, there's supposed to be a lady in white. There's supposed to be orbs around this particular cemetery. And the Everden family have believed, because they own the land, you know, some lady died, she lost her infant child, he died, and that was why they decided to build the cemetery. So cemetery built in the early 1800s. I mean, if they built this land in 1830, or they purchased the land in 1835, then one can only think of when the cemetery has gone on. So I'm walking through the cemetery right now. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. I'm really trying not to edit anything because I don't want this to be inauthentic. So I'm kind of just going to walk my way through here. But there's a book, and I will tell you the name of the author. Her name is Ursula Belsky, and she and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that last name, but she wrote a book called Haunted Bachelor's Grove. This is where I found a lot of this information. But here in this particular part, there are many graves that are knocked over. There was a lot of vandalism back in the day, particularly in the 1930s. That's when the hauntings, I should say, were started to be reported from. Actually, there used to be party flyers, and Ursula has one in her book, of the Midlothian Country Club. They would have these flyers that would come up, and they would say "Party at Bachelor's Grove," because this is where kids used to come out and party, and they would see weird stuff because it's a cemetery, and it's weird to like party in a cemetery, but that's what kids did. That's what my generation, we didn't really party. We just came out here to be scared. But why did it get scary, and why did things start to go bleak? Well, if you have kids coming out here partying on, you know, land that is sacred because it's a cemetery, there are obviously spirits here, right? So legend has it is that these people that would come out here and party here at Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in the 30s, people would come out and park along the Midlothian Turnpike, and what they would do, that was known as like Lover's Lane back in the day. Now look at this stuff. There's just some random stuff out here. Obviously that's not original. People are putting things here. I think they're here to mark graves that kind of are long forgotten, but some of them still look pretty good. And obviously people come out here to read these graves, to pay their respects, you would hope. Like here's one. This is from 1989. So now it is not a cemetery where people can be buried in anymore. Now it is owned, I think, between the park or the Cook County and the Forest Reserve, because in 1925, after this was land, that was private, the forest preserve came in and said, you know what, we're going to rebuild the forest preserves around this area. We're going to preserve the forest, I should say. And we're eminent domaining everybody. And the last family here was the Bowen family, Christopher Bowen, who owned this land up until the forest preserve wanted to buy it. And he started a rock quarry when he was here. I'm going all over the place because I'm walking, I apologize. But this is another one of the cemeteries. So obviously people come out here all the time to pay their respects. But the cemetery actually, for being much forgotten outside of people coming to visit like me, is in relatively good shape. But you see this is the interesting thing over here. So when I mentioned Christopher Bowen, or Christ Bowen, he started a rock quarry. And it was a self-proclaimed rock quarry that he wanted to start. And this is what's left of the quarry. It is now this pond that has Bachelor's Grove Creek kind of go into it. But this is the leftovers of the quarry that he wanted to get recognized by the folks that ran the forest preserve. He wanted twice the amount of money, and he basically showed that he made the land better, and there's this land on here. So on and so forth. That is how he got twice the amount offered for his land, is that quarry back there. Now, some people say that the quarry is, the water is 5 feet deep. Some people said they've seen people walk across it. Other people, like ghost hunters and stuff like that, have come out here and they say that could be as nearly 50 feet deep with certain equipment. Either way, I don't think I would want to go swimming in it. I mean, I imagine that there's cars in there and everything else, because back in the day, this also was like a dumping ground of, like, you know, mobsters and everything else in Chicago. People disappeared. So here's some more grave sites. So the cemetery is not big, obviously. I mean, this is the 1800s. So this is a very, very up and coming area. But going back to what I was talking about earlier about the 1950s. So Lover's Lane, known as Midlothian Turnpike out here. You've heard this legend and this lore for many, many years. And, you know, and it's been in the movie like Urban Legends. I believe it was even talked about in movies like Scream and things like that. So there's all of these accounts, but there's two in particular that are big ones here. One is that a couple was here making out right outside the cemetery back in the 50s, right? And, you know, the guy's getting fresh with his lady. Lady says, you know what, I don't like this. I want to go home. Mom and dad are going to be upset. So the guy starts the car, and the car doesn't start. So he gets out of the car and he goes to get help. And that help, I mean, I swear I've seen this headstone in many different spots as I've come to this cemetery. That's so strange. Same thing with this. I believe that this was on top of this. Yeah. Hangman. Yeah. Look at that. Huh. Right at the gates. There used to be like gates around the cemetery and a proper name of it. And of course, vandals have destroyed that over the years. Anyhow. So anyway, so back out to the Midlothian Turnpike, that's also known as Lover's Lane. So the guy goes for help and he's gone. And the girl sits in the car and she waits and she waits and she waits. And she hears, you know, the storm comes through, so she hears all this crazy creaking and all these things. And then she wakes up to a person that is telling her to come towards her, telling her to come towards her. It's a police officer saying, "Man, walk this way, walk this way. Don't look behind you. Don't look behind you." There's a movie called Campfire Tales. It's like a B-rated movie that came out in the early 2000s that depicts this in somewhat kind of a ish way. But basically, the woman comes out, she hears the scraping, she turns around and sees her boyfriend hanging upside down from one of these trees, and what you're hearing scraping on the car is the nails of this particular gentleman. So that is one story. The other story is more interesting, I think. There is an old asylum near here in Tinley Park. The old Tinley Park Mental Hospital. That's what we used to call it back in the day. And the story goes that this couple, again, was out, you know, in Lover's Lane, hanging out right here along the stretch. And it's like a quarter mile back out to the main road. But this used to be a main road that would go right through this area, right? And they were out here, and on the radio, probably WGN radio back in the day, they heard the news report of an escaped lunatic from the Tinley Park Mental Hospital. So these people are scared because we're not far from the Tinley Park Mental Hospital. It's just on Harlem Avenue, I believe. It's still, the remnants are still there, or they just knocked it down. It was the old circular, like, cement building that looked very like communist Russia. But that's what it was. So the people here, the girl and the guy, kind of freaked out because you can see you're kind of off the beaten path out here and you're right by a cemetery. So it's a little creepy, right? So they freak out and then they want to leave. So they go home. The guy drives the girl back home. And when he goes to pull open the door for his girlfriend, he notices a hook on the door. So there you go. That is the other big story. Now, there's other things. Forgive me again, I'm gonna put my phone in my pocket because it's a little cold out and I can't feel my fingers anymore. But the other lore is that when people go hiking in these woods, so I'm gonna attempt to go for a little walk here. And as you can see, people put markers because they don't want to get lost. But more specifically, the reason why people put these markers is because, from what I've been told, that some people come into these woods and they get disoriented, they get lost, they don't know where they are. They spend hours and hours and hours in these woods because the woods have a pull. There's some supernatural activity in these woods. Now, is any of that true? You know what? I can only speak for myself. And I'm going to tell you the story. And this is one of the absolute main reasons why I wanted to come to this park. So I went to Stagg High School, graduated in 1998. And my senior year, on Halloween day, we're sitting at lunch wondering what we're going to do because we're teenagers and it's Halloween. And what do you do when you're like 18 years old and it's Halloween? You're not old enough to go out drinking, and you're certainly too old to go trick-or-treating, and you're kind of stuck between the limbos. So you start talking, and you've heard lore of things like Monk's Castle, where if the monks catch you, they make you pray all night on your knees, and other random stuff, a black hearse that goes through the area. And then you heard about Bachelor's Grove, right? And you would hear about the things that would go on in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. So years and years of lore about all the things I just told you. And in these woods, people have been known to see apparitions, right? Floating orbs of light. And a house that disappears. And a legend has it that the house and even a caretaker would appear at the base of the entrance of the cemetery. And the caretaker had like a lantern. And he would come out and he would motion people to hurry down, and then people come and then he wouldn't be there. And allegedly this caretaker also murdered his family. And he had told accounts about how he was told to kill his family by a red devil. And allegedly that house were in these woods. Now, as you can see, these woods are very densely filled in. So in 1925, the Forest Preserve District basically eminent domained the land and made it a forest preserve, planting trees and whatnot. But there's still remnants of what I said, the cemetery back that way. I'm walking deeper into the woods. And it's funny, I haven't been here in years and I haven't walked back this way in a long time, but I can remember the time that I'm about to tell you like it was yesterday. Here is the creek, Bachelor's Grove Creek at one time, what it's called. I don't know what it's called now, but back then it was called that. And you can see the road is still here, which I think is incredible. So I'm a little bit now far away from the cemetery, but now I'm gonna walk and tell you a little bit about my story. So going back to Stagg High School, it is Halloween day, right? It's the morning, and we're all, how like in the morning you meet your classmates and you'd hang out before class. Usually it was like homeroom, 0 hour, I can't remember. But that's what we did, and we hung out. And I played football in high school and baseball and all these things, so you knew a lot of dudes that were very dude-like guys. And my two best friends, Daryl Claiborne and Tim Grant, and I are sitting here talking, and we're talking about Bachelor's Grove, and we get really excited about it as we're talking about it and talking about the lore and all the things that I just mentioned. And we're like, we should go there. We should totally go there and hang out and see what's up there. at night, right? And so that's what we decided to do. But we heard that police were here kind of like surveying the area and not letting people walk into the area because of all the stuff that's happened over the years of desecrating the land and the cemetery itself, people vandalizing things. So not cool stuff. So this is the area that I remember in particular. I actually remember, so this right now is showing that it goes off to the right, but I remember going left at some point, but we're gonna keep going this way because this is the area I'm talking about. So about, I would say 12 guys, all 17 years old, 18 years old, were walking through the forest here on Halloween. And before I get to that part, a couple of my friends that were girlfriends, right, that heard us talking about coming here on that particular night on Halloween, 1998 Halloween night. They warned me not to come. They're like, don't go there. It's not cool. Because a couple of the girls were Wiccans and they would come out here and they would do some like crazy stuff. And they knew people that did some really crazy stuff, like black magic stuff out here. Because it's a cemetery, obviously, it is got some energy to it, right? Even legend has it that this used to be an old Indian burial ground well before Bachelor's Grove was here, because Native Americans lived here for thousands of years before English settlers came to this area. You know, it was sparsely populated back then. So anyhow, we didn't really heed their advice. We parked in the neighborhoods off the turnpike and we army crawled our way into this space. So we saw a police car at the entrance. So we army crawled into the cemetery through the forest, and we made our way in and we started walking this pathway here. And one of the most terrifying things that ever happened to me in my life happened in these woods. So I'm gonna walk a little bit more to the area that I think where it was, and I'm pretty sure it was this area up here. So we're all army crawling in, right? And at the time, this spot here, maybe it's a little bit further, I can't remember. I'm almost positive it's this spot right here, because there used to be a tree right here. So like a tree like this, except it was a big tree like that one or that kind. It was actually almost like a tree like that, and it broke and it formed like a door right here. And you can kind of see how it's like the trees are winding right here, like this, kind of making like a gateway. And that's not me saying that, that's actually how it looks, because all the other trees are straight. But when you look at the trees right at this spot here, they're all kind of curving. And I'm sure that's just natural. But either way, it's good for a story, right? So we come into this area. Now, mind you, we have baseball bats and we have lights, right? Because we're coming in this area, we're terrified because, you know, we're dumbass kids coming in here and we're shitting bricks. So we get to this spot right here and there's about 12 of us and we're all walking like this together because we're terrified, right? So we walk down this way and I'll walk down this way. And as we're walking, you know, I'm telling people about the story of Bachelor's Grove because I'm the one who loves all of this cool lore that is the southwest side of Chicago. And you walk this way. Now I know for sure it was back that way because this kind of winds and this goes to the back of like Gaelic Park through these woods. You'll get to Gaelic Park. So in this area here is where we saw what was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. So I'm with my buddy Daryl and my buddy Tim, and these guys are like my best friends. And there's a bunch of other guys in it. Forgive me, I don't remember their names. I remember a few of them, but I don't want to say their names because of whatever. So we get to this spot here, and it's a big clearing, and we smell smoke, right? We smell smoke as if somebody just blew out candles, like that kind of smoke, right? And it was a really weird stench to the air. And we were in this spot here, and this was more of like a clearing because you know, I don't know, it was the 80s or the 90s, so like it was just different. Like all this was cleared out. You know, the trees were here, but all of like this ground cover, all this ground cover was gone, right? And this ground cover was flattened, and you saw pentagrams on the ground. And each corner of the pentagram was a candle, right? And in the candle, or inside the pentagram, were the animals. So they were doing like animal sacrifices out here on Halloween night, which in itself is creepy and terrifying. And when you're 18 with your friends, you got bravado. So, you know, of course we start like making noise, like, oh, whatever. And we would see people and things like out of the corner of our eye, like darting past us in these woods, right? It was insane. That's what we do. And then, and I'm not kidding, this is the part where I will never forget ever in my life. So this stretch right here that you're looking at, this right here was just a wall of trees, right? And you can see that they've kind of cleared things out, but the wall of trees, it was just, and it was really high, like this ground cover, like how high this is how high all of this was. It was really high, really densely thick, except you would see all the, like the pentagrams out on the ground. I mean, there was probably, I don't know, 3-4 pentagrams out in this space. And we walked out here, and we're walking around, and then, you know, we have our flashlights and we're shining the flashlights into the woods, right? We're shining our flashlights and we're looking like this and we're freaking out. It's really weird that the sun popped out just then as I'm telling the story. And then we hear like a cackle, like a creep, and this is before Blair Witch Project, right? A weird cackling sound. And so I'm looking out this way and my buddy Tim is looking this way. And Tim has a baseball bat, I have a baseball. And Tim hits me like, oh my God. And I'm like, what's your problem, man? And this, I shit you not, from the ground here all the way up, as far as you can see, all you saw were eyes, literal eyes. You know, like when you're driving and you see like a deer or something like that, and you see the reflection, like that kind of reflection, except some of the eyes look like that. Some of the eyes were red, some of the eyes were yellow, but there were hundreds of them, and they were all staring at us, and it was terrifying. So that was all like kind of over in this area. It was almost like it was blocking us to go back to the path. So naturally, we're terrified, right? And my buddy Daryl, who's a big burly guy, he was like, fuck this. And because of all that happening here and kind of blocking the way, Daryl knew that the cemetery is this way, right? If you just run straight through the woods. So Daryl runs, bolts through the cemetery, screaming because he's terrified. And all the other guys are terrified. So we start running out of the cemetery and we're traversing this area. And of course, look, it's not an easy spot to run through. There's a bunch of crap everywhere, right? So we're hearing like whispers and sounds and people talking like in your ear as we're running, and we're running through it and we're terrified. And we finally, Daryl runs to the path. So I'm walking on the path that we're going to get to eventually, where this path curves back around into the creek and then the cemetery, right? So Daryl and I and all these guys are running through this cemetery and the forest, and we plow through all the way until, guess what? We run into a Forest Preserve cop. And when I say we run into, I didn't run into him, Daryl did. And when I mean run into him, he ran into him and hit him because he didn't see him, because we like came and we ran through and we fell down out of the trail, and he like plowed into this poor like Forest Preserve cop and knocked the Forest Preserve cop down, knocked him out cold. He was just on the ground. We were terrified. So then we just kept going and we booked it back to the car. And that's kind of the end of that story. And for, I don't know, 15 years, I didn't come to this forest preserve because it was terrifying. But since then, I've come back to tell people about it. And this is the first time I've actually videotaped coming back to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. So I know that's a long story, but there's a lot of fun facts that are Bachelor's Grove and the cemetery, and I don't know, it's a fun thing. But like I said, you can't come out here at night, just like any other forest reserve. It's open from sunrise to sunset, and they don't mess around, because on Halloween, this time of year, there's a lot of weird shit that happens back here, and the cops don't play anymore. And because people come and they're gonna ruin, you know, the cemetery and do some crazy shit to that. So the cops kind of station out in front of the Turnpike Road, and make sure that people don't do their thing. But you can come walk through here through the day, and you'll find that it's actually quite lovely. You're going to see trees, you know, the forest. You're going to see deer. Like, I've seen deer out here since we've been out here, and I don't know, it's just a fun little walk down memory lane. But again, going back to what people see here that haunts them. So people come here and they see a blue light, flashing blue light, a flashing white light, an orb, if you will, where they see darting across the area. Now, I haven't seen any blue orbs or red orbs or anything. It's also daylight, but I got here when it was pretty dark. But if I'm being honest, I didn't want to come in when it was too dark by myself, just because I didn't know if I was going to run into people that I wouldn't necessarily want to run into. But see, this part of the forest here, this is the part we were running through, terrified and scared, bolting through here, like 12 guys running through here. The other thing that I didn't mention is that another thing that pops in the cemetery is the Lady in White, or the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. So the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, legend has it, is one of the first settlers of the area that lived in the area, and she lost an infant daughter. And the legend is that she is roaming the forest looking for her infant daughter. Another thing is a woman that was killed here, but that's not as much fun as the story. Either way, there is no being a woman took a picture, and it's in Ursula's book, of a woman sitting on one of these stones, and she's got photographic evidence. It was given to Kodak. Kodak said this is legit, it's real, and that is what people saw in this cemetery, a woman in white walking around looking for her infant. And like I also said, in this spot, people have seen a house disappear, reappear. You'd walk closer to the house, and the house keeps getting further and further away. And that is one of the big things people have seen. Richard Crowe, who is like the OG ghost hunter of Chicago, had witnessed that apparently. But the more than anything else is the orbs that people see. And the OG orb, if you will, was a white orb that were seen in these woods popping back and forth. Now, like I said, I'm doing this whole thing without editing or anything else. I am literally walking. I started this by walking at the entrance, and now here I am walking out of the cemetery. So I have no idea what's on this video. Hopefully when I look back, maybe there's an orb or two following me. That'd be kind of cool. But it's also been known by the researcher Ursula that this place has a pool, and people like want to come here, and she came here so much to research so much about what is in her book. And you should definitely pick up her book, because it explains the history of this and how this was an old timber area, and then people settled, and Bachelor's Grove was huge, and the family that bought the land in 1835 happened to be a female owner, and the cemetery was part of that land, right? There's just such great history in here. I just heard like a weird sonic boom. That was weird. Anyhow, so you would hear the orbs, or you would see the orbs, you would hear the cackling, as what we heard. I don't know if I would call the things that we saw orbs, but I definitely heard and saw something. I mean, and this is the spot where I mentioned that Daryl and I and my buddies, we came barreling out of the forest reserve. And as you can see, there's like a little, I didn't even notice this before, but there's like a little trailhead right here. And there's people who've put pennies on it. And you can kind of walk through the forest this way. So I'm just gonna know, I've never done this before. Maybe this is the path that we found when we were running. I mean, Daryl was full sprinting through these woods. He hit the cop right there. The cop fell down, and we didn't really stick around to see whether or not he was okay, because frankly, we were terrified. I didn't care. All we wanted to do was get the hell out of here. We got back in our cars and went home, and we talked about it for days and weeks and everything else. And it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. But I'm walking through what is Bachelor's Grove Woods, part of the forest preserves now. And this is kind of what it looked like. Now imagine walking through here at night, pitch black, and hearing cackling and seeing the 1,000 eyes that I saw. It was terrifying. And these woods are different than a lot of other woods, you know, because they don't really do a whole lot to take care of them. You know, it's just more of a forest preserve that used to be swampy land. So anyhow, that is my story of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Ow. And I don't know, it's kind of cool to come check out. And you should, I'm sure there's 1,000 other YouTube videos that talk about this particular spot. But I grew up in the area, heard about the man with the hook. I heard about the guy hanging upside down from a car. There's a bunch of other stories too, but those are the big ones. And the other big one is the vanishing house that people see. And they sometimes only see a window when they come up close to it. They think it's a house, and then they come and it's just a window that appears with light coming out of it, like a flickering light. Legend has it that that might be the old caretaker house or what have you. But I'm walking on it now. Nothing seems to be going on. But this is the old Midlothian Turnpike that was a major street until they built that country club I mentioned earlier. And this street kind of became obsolete and didn't have anybody come through here, which is partly the reason why this became like a desolate area where nobody really was hanging out. But this is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. This is the turnpike right here, out to the main turnpike at the end of the road there. Like I said, it's about a quarter-mile walk from beginning to end. And there's been lots of efforts to make this park nice again. There's been a huge push in the Tinley Park area, Midlothian, Crestwood, for people to come and clean up the cemetery, because it's not right that the cemetery is just sitting there decaying. But like anything else, it costs money, and people don't necessarily have the money to do it. The Forest Reserve doesn't seem interested in, you know, putting money into that cemetery, because a lot of the people are unknown there. And that quarry that we saw earlier, legend has it that a lot of the missing headstones are in that quarry, because in the 50s, going back to that story, when all of these stories of the hook guy and the guy hanging upside down from the tree, people would come here because they were like mad and scared. So they come here and they start messing with shit because of these stories. And they would say they're not scared, and they come and desecrate the land because they felt like the land was, you know, attracted evil. So there you have it. And there has been talks about preserving the cemetery properly, putting the sign back up. There used to be a gate that went around, and there was a prank like in the 50s where kids put up flares, I should say, along the new Midlothian Turnpike, directing them in here and then locking them in. So then they had to take the gates down, they had to blowtorch it off, and the whole thing. But needless to say, it's a fun story for Halloween. Come out here during the night. I'm sorry, don't come out here at night. Come out here during the day, sunrise to sunset. Those are the hours of the forest preserves. But I do know, if you come out here at night, it's a little terrifying, because things just happen in the woods at night. And then you got a place like this, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Whoops, I just hit stop on that, so I'm gonna have to edit a little bit. But this is the entrance that you see. It's actually kind of beautiful here during the day. And you get up to the main road here, and you see the entrance of old Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. It's a very nondescript area. Oh, and one thing I should mention, back in my 20s, I played on a softball team in Chicago with my friends, and we attempted to come here at night. We parked in like the neighborhoods. We thought we were all suave, and we get about, I don't know, halfway down the walkway there, and lo and behold, who do we find? One of the forest police's finest. The Forest Preserve police got us and told us we had to leave and wrote us a ticket. So there you have it. So they're not messing around. But either way, this is the entrance. That's what it looks like right there. This is the turnpike. And yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.